How did you get into trading?
I was born in Philadelphia, but I grew up in Wichita, Kansas. And I say I was born to two really great parents who had no dough. So I was the oldest, and my parents just had a set of rules. They said, if you follow these rules, you can do whatever you want. So I started school when I was 4 years old, and I would walk to school, and I would notice if people left like the recycling bottles, and I'd pick them up and take them to the store and get the nickel or whatever that was at the time. And I kind of well, my parents weren't giving me any disposable money. So I would go around picking up bottles and taking in the money for the recycling money. And then when I was 8 years old, I noticed that kids would go out to the candy store at lunchtime, and if you got back late, and you would essentially get hit with paddles by teachers. So I figured people would trade their money for the lack of punishment. So I went and bought a bunch of gum, and then I started selling gum in school when I was 8 years old, and I was doing pretty well at that. And I kind of liked the freedom of, I just liked being in control of my own destiny. In 1973, my family moved to Chicago from Kansas, and we were the first Black family in Lombard, Illinois. In 1973, that was not a great experience. I had a bomb thrown in my house, and obviously profanities written on our lawn. But I had a sneaking suspicion that white people like gum too. So I started selling gum in school, and they were buying so much gum that they didn't have enough money to buy ice cream. So I ended up making a deal with the vice principal to sell my gum and his ice cream. And so I would say always, I think I was blessed to have two really good parents that didn't have any money. My mother was 20 and my father was 23 when I was born. They just gave me a set of rules to live by, and as well as any young person could, I guess I tried to do my best. And then I went to school, studied math. In fact, I was such a terrible student that my parents went and got me tested, and they got me tested in something in math, and I came up with a better answer than that was on the test. So luckily, my mother convinced my father I wasn't totally without intelligence. When I was 12, I came up with my own theory of fractal geometry. I didn't call it that at the time, but about a decade later, the whole theory of fractal geometry came about, and I was just running these thoughts experiments in my head, and I was always kind of doing that. So I worked at IBM. I went to school, studied math. I worked at IBM for a little while. And when you were at IBM, they essentially told you if you're not a salesman, you're a nobody. So I wasn't going to be a salesperson. I was this nerdy kid. I knew that wasn't really a place for me, but I ended up writing all the algorithms that would give salespeople signals to upgrade machines. And they took this system and rolled it out across the country. And I think I had just turned 22, and then I left because I really didn't like it, and started my own company. But like a lot of 22-year-olds, I frankly knew more about technology than business. But I kind of did well enough to take care of myself. And then I have a friend, and I kind of read about trading, and I had become interested in it. And I had actually moved out to LA with some friends of mine, and I started writing trading systems for this company. Who guy took all the good trades and put it in his account and spread out all the bad trades. So called my mother and said, hey, can I come stay with you for a little while? I figure I better beat the jumpsuit. So I did, and there's a guy named Keith Velsich, who was the brother-in-law of one of my best friends. And I told him, listen, I'll come work for you for free if you let me on the floor. And I did that for a while, and I would say it was really kind of the best experience of my whole life, because you have to be super focused. You can't be emotional. And the only thing that matters is results.
What was the trading floor like when you arrived?
There's a learning process. You have to learn how to be an arbitrage clerk, right? You have to learn to speak the language of the floor, which is essentially with your fingers. That's not a normal thing for most people. So I had to learn that. And first, you're a runner, because nobody's going to trust you right away to take orders. So you just have to go through that. And I did that, and then I became pretty good at being an arbitrage clerk. And when I wasn't doing that, I was paying attention to the markets and kind of looking at patterns. I charted the Dow from when it opened on a daily basis for maybe 100 years. So I got pretty good at recognizing patterns. And then from there, I would create trading models. Then I was in options and I kind of created my own options trading models. It was intense. People would swear at you all the time, but it wasn't personal. It's just that's how it was. And since I'm not a person that's a big feely person, it really fit my personality.
What kind of technology were you using to write those programs?
There was tick data that was available that you could get. I forgot where you got it. Some of it I could get by hand, and I would just draw it by hand on these charts. There'd be big green pieces of paper. I don't know if you remember those things. I had a lot of that because I tracked the Dow by day, and I did it by hand. The open, close, high-low charts. But when I was writing I had invented a programming language using spreadsheets when I was at IBM. So I would write essentially macros, and I could use data, and I could create synthetic data sets, and I could recognize patterns. But mostly that's what I did, because it was more kind of pattern recognition, and then I could build formulas that would track delta and gamma and theta, all the rest of the things. So it was a long time ago. I don't remember. It was a combination of using spreadsheets and something, in some language. That's been a little while.
What did you learn while working on the floor for free?
To me, the best thing is that you have to, and it fit my personality, you have to be mega focused. And I was on the floor in 1987 in the pits watching that. So obviously, if you had screwed up during that time, it would have cost somebody a lot of money. So I would say what I learned, frankly, from being on the floor is more you have to be super focused, and the only thing that matters is results. And it doesn't matter what somebody says to you, because, right, I was an arbitrage clerk for Keith Velsage, and his badge was MoFo. And that was kind of his famous, phrase. But you had to learn not to take that. It's not personal. It's just business.
What was it like during the '87 crash?
There was a mini crash. I don't remember how long before that, but there was. I predicted it to the day and almost the exact point, I remember. And I said the market's going to crash. Started on the Friday, which was triple witching. And so it was the expiration of the October options. I had bought a bunch of October deep out of the money puts because they were 3 cents, and the Novembers were like 8 cents or 10 cents. So me being stupid, I bought the Octobers instead of the Novembers. So that's my own kind of dumb story. But what I noticed in here is I would watch the options traders, how they would behave at expiration. So obviously, if you sell a put and the put's out of the money, you get to keep the cash. But what happens is that options, when they're really out of the money, they had a lot of what I call potential gamma. If you had sold puts and there was a spike to the downside, the option traders who thought that was free money all of a sudden would panic and they would buy it up. So I could then look and see how people responded. So I ended up being a gamma trader. And over time, what you can see is these anomalies happen periodically. Like there's always a tornado, there's always a fire, there's always a something, and where the market makes abnormal moves. But these abnormal moves, if you're trying to average it out, it seems abnormal. But if you look at these things periodically over long periods of time, they are actually quite normal. So I could predict these, not perfectly, but pretty well, and then look at people's behaviors. I would say a lot of the way that I look at the world really came out of that experience from being at the Mercantile Exchange.